Welcome, I'm Reverend Stephanie Neal, and I'll be sharing with you the creation story. Diana was the first created of all creation. In her were all things. In other words, Diana, or goddess, is primordial deity. She existed before the first beginning as chaos, God without form, existing in a void, and having within herself the seeds of all things, both spiritual and material, all mixed up together without order or definition. Primordial deity is androgynous, having both feminine, spirit or yin, and masculine, matter or yang elements, and sometimes portrayed as such in myth and artwork. Sometimes, however, primordial deity is portrayed as feminine, since we think of primordial deity in association with the goddess or spirit, indeed as the higher self of goddess. In this sense, primordial deity is identified as the crone goddess, the goddess in her aged state, having existed from before the dawn of time. This is the wisest and most knowing part of goddess, the most commonly called Hecate or Hecate. This is the goddess portrayed with greater or lesser respect as the Halloween witch, with her pointed hat and broom. The endless eons, primordial deity existed in this amorphous and undifferentiated state in the darkness before the first creation. At first she slept, aware of nothing, resting and recharging, gathering her energies, and merely being, alone and complete in herself. But over the course of time, primordial deity began to stir, to become aware. First, she became aware of her own existence. In time, she began to think, to dream, to question, to desire. She wondered, what would it be like to feel? What would it be like to move, to take action, to be able to receive sensation, to see, to hear? And so, for eons, primordial deity thought and considered and wondered. And then, out of herself, the first darkness, she divided herself into darkness and light. She was divided. The God, her brother and son, herself and her other self, was the light. Primordial deity divided herself. One became two. All of the physical, tangible, volatile parts of primordial deity went into the God, who was the light. The God exploded into existence out of primordial deity in a shower of sparks and flame, which we remember as the Big Bang, the starting point of physical creation. all of the spiritual, ethereal, eternal parts of primordial deity remained in the goddess. In this sense, goddess is thought of as a continuation of primordial deity, since the consciousness of primordial deity is one of the spiritual parts that remained with her. And the god spread out into all directions through the primordial void in a blaze of light and superheated matter. In time, his fire would cool into stars, and from stars into planets. As this happens, the vibration of the matter slows. It becomes more dense, seemingly solid. This slowing, cooling, and solidifying is described as falling into matter. Symbolically, the god is described as having fallen into 7 planes of existence. Some people say there are more, but then the divisions are not as exact as all that. So the number is not so important as the concept. And when Diana saw that the light was so beautiful, the light which was her other half, her brother the god, she yearned for it with exceeding great desire, wishing to receive the light again into her darkness, to swallow it up in rapture, in delight. She trembled with desire, and this trembling was the first dawn. But the god's light fled from her and would not yield to her wishes. He was the light which flies into the most distant parts of heaven, the mouse which flies before the cat, seeing the beauty of the god, that is, of the physical universe. The goddess was entranced with desire and wanted it back. She had dreamed of seeing and tasting and doing, but being separate from the god, she could do none of this. She could only observe from outside that which she had created. The goddess wanted the experiences she had dreamed of, and so she desired to take the created universe back into herself. But it wasn't that easy. The Vangelo Strega tells how the goddess went to the oldest part of herself, primordial deity, who was still within her. The Vangelo Strega calls primordial deity the mothers and fathers who were before the first creation, emphasizing primordial deity androgynous aspect. In other words, the goddess consulted her own higher self. In many ancient myths, notably the story of Demeter and Persephone, this same process is shown as the goddess entering Hecate's cave to counsel of the eldest and wisest part of deity. The Vangelo Strega Diana asks primordial deity how she could reunite with the god. How could spirit take matter back into itself? And the ancient one, primordial deity, The goddess's own higher self answered in this way. To rise, you must fall. To become the greatest of all goddesses, you must first become a mortal. So in other words, it was not possible for spirit simply to take matter back into herself. If the goddess wished to reunite with the god, to be one with matter and experience it, she had to enter into the physical world. Only in that way could goddess and god reunite. And so Diana fell. That is to say, she descended through the 7 planes to the physical. She did this by dividing off parts of herself, the many souls which she sent into the physical, placing them into physical forms. Each soul was to lead many lifetimes, going through many physical forms in the process. Listening to this now, you are one of the lifetimes of one of these souls, which are part of the great goddess. We are her children, and also children of the god, for our existence is the accomplishment of their union. The Vangelistrega describes this process in extremely symbolic terms. It tells how Diana took the form of a cat, the soul entering into material form, and that in this way she moved close to the god, then resuming her own form, made passionate love to him. Then, to maintain the union of spirit and matter, the goddess casts a spell. She sang a charm, and her voice was as the buzzing of bees. And then Diana sat at her spinning wheel and began to spin the thread of life, and the god turned the wheel. In other words, having placed soul into matter, the goddess used the power of sound, that is vibration, to set the universe as we know it into motion. Energy is what holds all things together, from subatomic particles to the very galaxies of stars. The vibration of that energy is movement, sometimes described as frequency, is what makes it work and determines on what level it works. The denser or more physical a thing is, the lower its vibrations or frequency is said to be. The more spiritual the energy, the higher its vibration becomes. Vibration is comparable to sound, which can be powerful in working with magic. For this reason, the vibration of the universe at differing frequencies through each of the 7 planes or spheres is often described as the music of the spheres. Music and song have long been used in many spiritual traditions as a means of affecting the vibration of energy. Sound can be used in this way to dispense negative or unfocused energy, to break down psychic blockages, and to create or affect specific energetic forms. Sound is a very powerful tool, precisely because sound or vibration is the very force the goddess used to set the wheel of life into motion. Called the goddess spinning wheel in the Vangelo del Strega, the wheel of life is a very ancient concept. It is represented annually by the sacred wheel of the year. From this wheel, the goddess, or spirit, spins the thread of life, determines its nature, qualities, the lessons to be learned, and the things to be experienced. However, the god, matter, or more precisely, physical experience, turns the wheel. As goddess is the nature of life, the god is the process of living, the movement through the planes of existence. The goddess is the essential nature of the universe and life itself. She provides the divine spark which animates all things. However, it is the god that carries that spark forward. The god is Lord of space and time, master of the temporal universe. In this aspect, he is called Lord of the dance, for he leads the dance of life, facilitating experience and growth. In this way, the soul's essence originated from the goddess. Their ability to move and to grow originated from the god. The many souls descended into the physical plane. The goal of this was to fully experience, to learn and grow. Having arrived in the physical, the souls set out to learn all that the physical plane could teach them, and then began their ascent back up through the 7 planes to ultimately rejoin with Goddess, from whence they came. Each plane has its own special lessons, which are of great importance to the soul. Though seemingly separated from the Goddess, each of these souls remain always attached to her, always part of her, for it is through them, as part of the souls, that Goddess entered into her own physical creation, the God. We are one with the Goddess, and our experiences are her experiences. We are eternal and immortal as souls, never cut off from Goddess or Spirit, only differentiated. All of the powers and abilities of Goddess are within us and at our command. If we can clear our vision enough to see and access them and enjoy them. Descending through the planes of existence was like going through a curtain or a veil. The veil obscures our vision of the things above us. Because of the veil, we forget that we are part of the Goddess, that we are spiritual beings experiencing the physical, and start to think that we are simply physical beings. As we ascend the planes, we are highly aware of those planes which are below us and perceive them fairly easily. It is much harder to perceive the planes above us. It is difficult to see or communicate with the higher planes of consciousness, and easy to imagine that what our eyes perceive is all that exists, which is not true. To progress, we must part the veil and see beyond it, the more we work magically and physically and psychically, the thinner that veil becomes between each plane of existence. Some individuals are born with the veil already very thin. These people are said to be born old. It may seem that who are born old do not have to work as hard to progress, that psychic and magical skills just come naturally to them. This is because they have already done the work to develop these skills in previous lifetimes. It is generally said that we are currently on the mental plane, able to easily perceive mental, emotional, and physical energies, and that we are, even though I feel that many people now are on the astral plane also, and have long been in process of moving into the intuitional plane, and thus having an increased perception of what we might loosely call psychic matters. And this is where I feel that many of us are right now. Though we have some perception of the planes beyond this, it is difficult to see very much of them from our current perception. Though we will see flashes at times, or feel that overwhelming divine love of the goddess sometimes. Now, of course, as in all things, there are a variety of points of view on the subject of the planes or spheres of existence. This generally is the Correllian view. Wicca perceives the conscious mind as only a small part of a much larger being, originating from and eternally connected to the mother goddess. Our conscious self is normally a reflection of our physical body, the first dimension, our emotions, the second dimension, and our thinking mind, the third dimension. These three dimensions of our being are said to compose our lower self. Now, it should be understood that the term lower refers to vibrational frequency and not any sort of value judgment, as all parts of the being are good and valuable. The lower vibrational frequency, the greater the physical density in this reality. As humans, we normally have a natural comprehension of these three aspects of our lower self, accepting them without question as obvious components of our being. We all know our physical body and its reactions. We feel our emotions, conscious and subconscious. We are all aware of our cognitive and rational facilities. All of these are within our level of common experience and are known to us, if not always fully understood. Above our level of common experience is our higher self. Like the lower self has three levels of being, immediately above our common perception is the astral self, the fourth dimension, also called the causal self. So the astral self is the part of us which determines what things we choose to experience in a given physical life and what lessons we are trying to learn. It is from this level that the higher self creates the life we are living. The astral portion of the higher self sets the pattern of life, accepts or rejects every potential event in it, and can make whatever alterations the higher self chooses at any given point during your life. This is one reason it is important to be on good terms with your higher self, because by moving in sync with its choices, because after all, they're really your choices, we make life a much easier process. The astral level, also sometimes called the intuitional or Buddhic level, is a level that we shift to when we work magic. Now, above the astral is the egoic self, or soul, or fifth dimension. The word soul is often used to describe the whole higher self, but specifically refers to the fifth level of the being. Now, the soul is the separate personality of the higher self, built up of the total experiences of many, many lifetimes, all of the benefits of every life lived, the outcome of all lessons learned, the knowledge of all things seen, felt, and done is retained in the soul and gives it its special character, which is distinct from all other souls. You are unique. The soul is the organ by which the being grows, the manner in which experience and growth is retained and built upon. Above the soul is the monad. The term monad comes from the Greek monos, meaning single unit. The monad is the portion of the soul which is perfect in itself, just as it was when the goddess divided it off from herself. The monad is a separate portion of the goddess, but is essentially the same intelligence with no differentiation. The monad is directly from and is the goddess and contains all the attributes and qualities of the divine, while at the same time being separated unto itself. The monad is the motivating force of being. Because of this, the monad moves always to the good and is incapable of doing otherwise. The monad is a perfect microcosm of goddess and remembers the time of the first creation when all was one. The monad also remembers the reason that it was separated off from the goddess, and because of this has a natural desire to evolve and unfold until it is one with the goddess again. These three parts form the higher self, of which we only become aware through effort. The astral self, which creates our life as we live it, deciding and arranging all that happens. The soul stores all of these experiences and is shaped by them. And the monad, the divine part of us, which sought those experiences and revels in them, but which also seeks eventual union with the rest of deity and a return to the primordial oneness. The final level of being above the monad is the goddess herself, the seventh dimension. She is the single soul of the universe, from whom all others ultimately come, and she is the very center of your being. All of creation branches off her through the medium of the God. Goddess is the life. God is the living. Goddess is the essence. God is the manifestation. Every aspect of creation is endowed by both Goddess and God, and all is settled in the higher levels of its being, if not always in the physical. We just saw how God fell through the planes of existence. Then we saw Goddess fell through the planes of existence, and we fell through the 7 planes of existence. That Goddess needed us to reunite with the God. She needed us to experience what she dreamed and desired, and has called everything living to once again return to her bosom. The monad in which we belong resides within us, below the divine plane of existence and above the soul. In the creation of the monads, Goddess sought to reunite with the Goddess and to experience the wonders of the material world, as well as returning the universe into an integrated whole again. And she needed us to do all this as we have always loved her. The human process can be found in the tarot. Until next time, blessed be.